Hello and welcome to another Genshin discussion video. So today we're going to be following up on the last non-Genshin optimization video I did, talking about my thoughts on the Windbloom Ode weapon, and I talked about how I thought that it's not going to be great compared to Stringless. It's basically a budget Stringless, but it might have its uses, most specifically on someone like a sub-DPS Ganyu, who is going to want to make use of the attack buff to buff both her elemental skill and ult, like the Stringless would, but also her charged attacks, which Stringless does not actually help. So we're going to be looking at a direct comparison damage-wise of these weapons. We're going to be looking at a Refinement Rank 5 Windbloom Ode, because you get it Refinement Rank 5 for free, so there's no reason not to focus on the Refinement Rank 5 version, level 1, as well a level 1 Refinement Rank 1 Stringless, because for free-to-play players, most of the time, I don't expect them to actually have a Refinement Rank 2 Stringless. It's hard enough to get just one as a free-to-play player. It's not worth refining them when you could have two of them to put on different characters instead. And I'm a budget player, and I only have the three of them, so what am I going to expect a free-to-play player to have there? As such, this is the build that we're going to be using. Obviously, I only have 500 attack because I have 43 base attack from the two weapons. Again, they have the exact same base attack and the exact same elemental mastery, so that's not going to come into play at all. The only thing that is going to be judged here is their passives and how they affect different damage on Ganyu here. And then talents are 868. My artifacts, I have a 2-piece Noblesse and a 2-piece Cryo set. I'm probably going to switch to a 4-piece Cryo set soon. I just don't have the artifacts for it at the moment, simply because, gosh, she's like 15% crit rate. But again, as such, with only 15% crit rate, we're going to be looking at specifically non-crit hits on this analysis, because one, it's going to be way too inconsistent to look for crit hits, so it'll be easier, and the only thing that is going to change is the volume, I guess you could say, of the numbers that we're going to be looking at. Is it going to be low or is it going to be slightly higher, because it's a consistent buff on either form of damage, so it doesn't matter if we look at crits or not, as long as on both sides we look at we stay consistent of non-crits. Overall, it won't have any impact. So the first thing we're going to look at here is the one I already have equipped, the Stringless. I've already done all the calculations, so I know the results, so that I can focus on talking about this here. But first thing we're going to look at is the charged attacks. So with the Stringless, this is going to be consistent throughout. You're going to get 681 charged attack hits, and 1158 on the Frost Flakes. Again, on this specific build, is what we're going to be getting on that. On your E, we're looking at 713, and on your ult, we are looking at 484 consistent non-crit damage with this build, looking at a level 1 R1 Stringless, and that is going to be our baseline numbers that we're going to be using to compare it with the Windbloom Ode. And we're going to be comparing the Windbloom Ode using both without the buff, so that we get a baseline of that as well, and we're going to be looking at it when the 6-second 32% attack buff is active. So let's go ahead and switch over to it right now. We're going to have as few cuts as well, so this video might go just slightly longer during this section here while I'm showing the direct numbers, because I don't want y'all to think that I switched up the artifacts or anything to change the outcome. I don't want any cuts that might cause you to think that. So we're going to solely switch the weapon, as you saw, and we're going to come back and we're going to look at the damage with and without the buff. Now, one thing I do want to mention before I show this off is the E skill is going to be the same with or without the buff. For some reason, normally skills are going to snapshot, but they're going to snapshot before you would gain a buff that would be activated by that skill. That is not the case with Windbloom Ode. Instead, anytime that snapshotting would occur, so that you wouldn't have the buff the opposite happens. You do get the buff on the snapshot for some reason. I'm not sure why. For those that don't know what snapshotting is essentially whenever you activate a skill that is going to stay out on the field. Well, most skills in general, but especially relevant for those that stay out on the field. Whenever you activate the skill, that skill essentially takes a snapshot of your stats at that exact moment when you activated it, and it will use those stats throughout the skill's duration. So with Ganyu ult and Venti ult are two very obvious examples of this. When you activate them, it's going to take a snapshot whenever you activate the skill, and it's going to keep that stat line as what it considers for the entire duration of the ability. So with the Windbloom Ode weapon, if you use your E first to get that 6-second buff, and then immediately use your ult, you're not going to lose that damage bonus or that attack buff 6 seconds into the ult. You are going to keep that buff throughout the entire duration of the ult. So I talked about how the Stringless is a bit more consistent because of not having the 6-second duration restriction that the Windbloom Ode does. I was a little off about that. You should. It's not actually going to make a difference as long as you make sure to activate the buff and then activate your ult. So E and then Q is what you should be doing, and you'll have that buff for the entire duration of Ganyu's ult. So that is a non-factor. So now let's actually take a look at the damage. So we're looking at this without the buff whatsoever. So charge shot 681, 1158, the exact same. So we know that the build, so obviously you can see I did not do any kind of crazy editing jump cut there. It's the exact same damage because they have the exact same base stat line. Now the E skill is going to be 734, which is actually slightly more than the R1 Stringless, which is kind of crazy the first time I saw it. I thought that was really wild. Now it's going to take us a minute to get the energy back up so that we can use our ult again to show this off. But in the meantime, we're going to take a look at the buffed charge shot damage after I hopefully dodge this and don't die. Oh gosh. Okay, hello. Alright, so after we use our E, we're going to use the charge shot. We can fit like 2 charge shots in here, so 814, and that second one was a crit. And I whiffed that really bad. Okay, so we saw that the charge shot hit at least was 814, which is actually about a 19.5% buff from without it. And I got a crit on that again. And 1383 on the Frostflake arrow hit. So we're going to pause this so that we can talk for just a quick second. So that is a 19.5% damage buff when you have that bonus, the buff from the Windbloom Ode weapon. That is insanely massive. Generally, the combo that I would be trying to use with Ganyu using this weapon is E, then Q, and then charge shots. If you cancel the animation of the E with your Q, and then time the end of the animation of your ult, of activating it as close as you can get up to 2 charge shots with that 32% attack buff still active in that that whole 6-second window. It's not super consistent to be able to get 2 of them, so I would more so say that you're on average going to have 1.5 charge shots from it, because sometimes you'll time it really well and get 2, and other times you'll only get the 1. So we'll say 1.5 times on average that you'll get it. But even then, a nearly 20% buff on Ganyu's charged attack and Frostflake arrow damage is insane. That is a massive buff, and you don't get that at all on the Stringless. You cannot get that buff on the Stringless because Stringless is only affecting your elemental skill and elemental ult thing, burst. That's the term. So that right there is already a massive point in the favor of Windbloom Ode for sub-DPS Ganyu, who is going to indeed be using charge attacks as part of her rotation as you go through your team. That's notable to keep in mind. And now, let's take a look at the ult and see how that looks in comparison. So, E, we got the buff, and now Q. And now your Q non-ult hits are hitting for 506, which is actually 22 damage higher than your, what's it called, than with an R1 Stringless. And again, you are going to be able to keep that up the entire time, because it's going to, the ult is going to snapshot your stats while you have that the buff up, and it's going to keep that buff up throughout the entire duration of the ult. That's really good. That's about an 8 or 9% damage buff compared to the Stringless. And it's about the same on the elemental skill as well, about 8 or 9%. That's pretty respectable, and when you pair that in comparison to the charge shot being a 20% damage buff, which on a fully built Ganyu support is probably going to be in total, I mean, probably 10 or 15,000 damage. That is, especially on melt procs, that is going to be a nice buff. That is substantial. And keep in mind, that 9% buff in damage on your ult is going to be applied to every single one of those icicles that hits, and I believe 2 of them drop every second. So that's a potential 30 icicle hits, all getting an 8 or 9% damage buff, which adds up a lot. So is Windbloom Ode comparable to Stringless? Honestly, on sub-DPS Ganyu, again, as I said, you switch to Ganyu, you press E, then Q, then 1 or 2 charge shots. Yes, it is actually going to be a very notable higher amount of damage than the Stringless when the Stringless is at R1. Now, if you are a budget player, or especially a whale who has more refinements on a Stringless, well, in that case, then the damage difference is going to start to falter a bit. If you I don't have enough level 1 Stringless to refine and be able to test this myself directly, but if I had to guess based on the amount of increase that you get on the Stringless's passive every refinement, at refinement rank 2, they're probably going to be pretty comparable, with the Stringless most likely usurping the Windbloom Ode's E and ult damage, but the Windbloom Ode still making up for it with the charge shot damage and Frostflake arrow damage. But at refinement rank 3, I think the Stringless is going to definitely usurp the Windbloom Ode in the total amount of damage you do, just because of the difference that the E and Q are going to have compared to the Frostflake arrow damage. It's just going to be too much to still continue to say that the Windbloom Ode is a worthwhile option to use. But again, that's only if you have like a refinement rank 3 Stringless, and again, also only speculative. So take that with a grain of salt and keep that in mind. But if you're not a whale or a player who's gotten, a budget player who's gotten really lucky with a lot of Stringless pulls, Windbloom Ode is going to be a fantastic weapon for sub-DPS Ganyu, and it's definitely what I'm about to build up and probably use semi-permanently on my sub-DPS Ganyu. So hopefully this video was helpful to those of you who are looking for a direct comparison for this very specific niche question of R1 Stringless versus R5 Windbloom Ode on sub-DPS Ganyu and sub-DPS only. But hopefully that was helpful and informative and interesting. I definitely think it was really cool, and I was honestly surprised by the results here. So thanks for watching the video all the way through. Be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.